Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Toy Thursday with Johnny Tiger on May 27, 2021. So I've been thinking ever since that I did the uh, episode honoring the Year of the Ox that it was kind of interesting to put together the representative of the Year of the Ox. I was thinking, what else can I do to mix things up a little bit and just make things a little bit more unconventional? So, uh, thanks to a very good suggestion from my beautiful, intelligent girlfriend, she said, "Hey, it would be kind of cool to have action figures that can represent the five Chinese elements. The five Chinese elements, which are metal, water, fire, earth, and wood. Yes, sorry, no heart here. We're not talking about Captain Planet. Um, so, why are the Chinese elements significant? Because just like when we talk about the horoscope, uh, people's zodiac, when you look at people's zodiac and what Chinese animal they're born under, you also have to think about taking into consideration what Chinese element they are born under. Because depending on the element they represent or they're with, it makes a big difference in their personality, of course. So here is a quick crash course on how to figure out what Chinese element you are. What is your element? If your birth year ends with 0 or 1, then you are a metal element. If your birth year ends in 2 or 3, then you are a water element. If your birth year ends in 4 or 5, then you are wood. If it's 6 or 7, it's fire. And 8 or 9 is earth. Another easy way to remember this is to remember that all the Chinese elements are interconnected. They're interconnected. For example, metal is directly linked with water. Now, it actually took me a long time to figure out why is metal linked with water until I remember that in the old days, a lot of people, their source of water was on the well they get their water from. So to dig a well, you mostly need metal equipment. You need metal tools, shovels and pickaxe and stuff like that. So to dig a well, you need metal. Uh, a lot of time, the containers we use to hold water in are metal. A lot of things that we use around water, uh, especially today, fishing rod and stuff like that, they're all metal. So metal is directly linked to water. So metal, water, wood. Why is wood right next to water? Because wood need you need water to grow plants. You need water to grow trees. Wood will not exist without water. So metal, water, wood, and yes, fire. I mean, this one's obvious. Why is fire right next to wood? Because you need wood, at least in the old days, you needed wood to make fire. And then the last but not least is earth. Why is earth after fire? Because after you make a fire, after things burn out, you get ashes, and that forms earth. And then, of course, we go back around. Right after Earth, we come back to metal. Why is metal right after Earth? Because you dig ore, you dig iron, you dig uh, metal out of Earth. So as you can see, it's all interconnected like a big simplified puzzle. So this is going to take 5 episodes to do for us to represent the 5 elements. And today we're going to start with the first element, year that ends in 0 or 1, aka the element of metal. In front of the camera, you see one of my more antique or retro action figure. This is Colossus. Colossus is a mutant, a hero on the X-Men team. He is from Russia, and his superpower, his mutation, his mutant ability is that he can transform his body into a living organic metal. So he's like a metal man, basically, when he decide to and have all the super strength and super durability and all that stuff. Some of you that watched Deadpool 2, you remember Colossus. He was a big Russian metal dude in there fighting Juggernaut. Now, let me talk a little bit about the representative of metal because it actually took me a bit of thinking to figure out how this is going to work. See, especially when it comes to metal, things could have gone really, really lame. We got so many action figures, so many characters wear a lot of armor, so many action figures that have metallic body parts. So technically, it should be a no-brainer to come up with representative for the metal element. However, I wanted to make this more interesting, so I set out some ground rules. First, metal armors don't count. If the figure, if the character is organic on the inside, then that disqualifies them. Which means, sadly, Colossus here is actually disqualified from uh, being able to represent the metal element. Because even though he transformed his outside into metal, his inside, his brain, his heart, they're still organic. There's still a very human person in there. So, unfortunately, he is not going to count as one of our metal representatives. However, I did really think that a person who can transform his whole body into a living metal uh, uh, representation kind of deserved to be in here. So I decided to use him to open the show. So even though he's not in the running as a representative, he at least can be here as an opener. This action figure is from, I believe, 1996, so he's really old. He was the second Colossus action figure ever released back in the 90s, and comparing to most action figures back then, he was very, very bulky. Some of you would be able to tell that immediately this is an odd-looking Colossus. Colossus is big, but he's usually not this stumpy looking. He usually very proportionate. He looks like a if you take a very well defined bodybuilder and magnify him to be 7 feet tall and made of metal. But this guy, if you look at this guy, he's all super wide, super stocky, so the proportions kind of off. However, he was a fun figure. He was really big and kind of unique looking. His articulations are weird though. His arms are permanent stuck, raised to the side like that. I mean, you can kind of move them a little bit, but he's he can't bring his arms back. He's forever stuck in doing the butterfly press. Just a really weird thing for them to do to the action figure to have his arm flapped out to the side like that. So the second ground rule I set for the metal category is that the character have to be completely metal. So people with the like organic parts like the metal arm, or people who have a brain trapped inside a metal body, like Crane from Ninja Turtle, people who are wearing metal suits like Shredder. Unfortunately, they will be completely disqualified. We are looking for true representatives of the metal category. The third ground rule is robots that have to be piloted will not count because they are really nothing but vehicles. You still need an organic person to pilot them. So that will disqualify most of the Power Ranger robots and uh, uh, the robots from Pacific Rim. in those categories. We are looking for uh, metal representatives that are perfectly sanctioned within themselves. They are independent, they can think and move on their own without needing to be piloted. Now, some of you said, why are you making this so hard for yourself? Well, because I want to make this interesting for you and for me. I have, to this, to the date of this video, I have over 800 action figures. So if I get away really easily by picking just any random armored action figure, then there's no fun. Okay? I want to be able to trying to figure things out and really think about the action figures I have. And that's what makes it fun for me when I make these videos is to really dig in to my collection to come up with uh, action figures that will suit our purpose. And I want to show you characters and figures you might not have thought of, might not have seen, might not have heard of before, uh, without just keep going back to the same few that you see all the time. And this is also why there are a few very obvious choices that has been excluded from the group today. I could have cheated this one very easily by bringing Ultron and his daughter Jocasta back, and I could have brought out a Terminator or two and just call it a day. But we've shown all those before, so I wanted to show something new that we have not seen on Toy Thursday in the past. With that said, let's start bringing in our representative for the metal category. When I mentioned to my girlfriend that we're going to do metal representative, she immediately said, well, how about R2D2? I thought that's such a good idea because R2D2 is robotic. There's nothing organic about him, and he is definitely independent. He doesn't have to be piloted, so he fits our purpose very, very well. However, however, there's a problem. I don't have an R2D2 action figure, but I do have an action figure that was a knockoff of R2D2. Meet R2Q5. Let me pull him back a little bit so hopefully you guys can see him a little bit better. Let me put him up here. Cute little guy. I would say the R2 droids look kind of like trash can. And they're gonna do. But this one is black with bronze highlights because unlike R2D2, who's one of the good guys, R2Q5 works for the Imperial uh, forces. So he's one of the bad guys. He's an astromech, just like R2D2. His design, his shape is exactly like R2D2, just with a different color scheme. And he works for the bad guys. And he has all the same functions as R2D2. He can calculate flight pattern. He can aim weapons. He's basically a walking, living computer that assists pilots when they are trying to go into battle. But despite this being a really boring looking, very small action figure that looks like a small trash can, he is full of surprises. Let me show you guys. This was released in the Imperial Star Wars Black set, uh, Trooper set. And if you rotate the dome on his head, let me turn him a little bit so you guys hopefully can see. The leg underneath extend and retract when I rotate his head. That's an interesting little design right in there. And his other legs move back and forth, and there are rotating wheels on the bottom, so he can just roll along nicely. There are also panels in the front here on the chest. If you open them, and I think I have to shake him a little bit. There. If you open this panel on his chest and then just shake him a little bit, there are two little hidden arms that will come out. They're like weapons. They're like guns or something. Really cool. I mean, on R2D2, these are like tools, screwdrivers and stuff like that. But I believe on R2Q5, one of these is actually a laser cannon. And then when the panel closed, you wouldn't even know they're there. So even though this is a very small robot, he is rather interestingly made with working panels that can open and working hidden arms that can come out and legs that move and wheels that turn and legs that retract when you rotate his head. It's just like full of a lot of features packed into a little robot that is no taller than 3 inches. Quite interesting. And this guy was made by Hasbro. Hasbro has quickly risen to being one of the most popular toy makers in the last 10 years, and they have accumulated some of the best properties under their belt. Prior to the 90s, they were known to make those small Star Wars action figures, those small G.I. Joe action figures, but no one really thought, like, especially mature collectors, no one ever thought much of Hasbro. But ever since they got the Marvel license from ToyBiz, they have gone miles and miles into becoming one of the best toy makers. Now they got the 6-inch line for the Star Wars action figure, 6-inch line for Power Rangers. They got the license for the 6-inch G.I. Joes, and I heard they just acquired the license for Fortnite action figures. And of course, they have their Marvel Legends, that is just amazing. So Hasbro is that I just have to say, like, as far as a company that just suddenly come out of nowhere and uh, able to rise above everyone's expectation, really good job, Hasbro. Taking R2Q5 off the stand, we are going to bring in our next representative of the metal elements. The next guy just happened to also be a Star Wars character, although a lot of you probably, unless you watch the movie, you wouldn't know who this guy is. This tall, gangly, skinny, imposing looking robot is called K2SO. Yeah, all the robots' names were like letters and numbers. R2D2, R2Q5, C3PO, and then here we have K2SO. K2SO is a very imposing looking robot. He has a vaguely skeletal shaped head, and he's mostly black with some silver trim, and there's some dials and buttons that are different color. But he's mostly black with these dead looking white eyes. He definitely doesn't look like a very friendly robot. However, contrary to his look, he's one of the good guys. Isn't that strange? We have R2Q5, who's all small and cute, and he's one of the bad guys. And then we have K2SO, who looks so sinister that you would swear that he's one of the bad guys, but he's actually one of the good guys. He appeared in the Star Wars Rogue One movie as a reprogrammed Imperial security droid that ended up working with the heroes. In the end, he even sacrificed himself to save his friend. This is a robot who sacrificed himself to save his human friend. I mean, yeah, that's some serious reprogramming going on there. Look at the design of this guy. He's really tall, really lanky, got skinny metallic arms and legs. His forearms look way longer than his upper arm, and if I let his arm dangle down, his hands go all the way down to his knees. It's really creepy, long, skinny proportion to him, and a kind of a skeletal look with a big chest big rib cage and a skull like head, and he's kind of hunched forward. And he's super articulated. He's also made by Hasbro, by the way. This guy stands about 7.5 inches tall, so really tall. Has a head that can nod up and down, turn left and right, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Shoulders that go up and down. Do they open? I think, yeah, they open to the side too. Elbow that can bend and rotate. What's interesting is because he's a robot, so he obviously don't have all the same restraints that a human would have. So his elbow actually bends backward. Like his arm can come to the front and his elbow can bend to the back. This is really creepy. And then he has wrist articulation. His wrist move in and out, rotate side to side. His waist turns. His leg kick up. So he can do the crane dance like that. And then his legs go out to the side so he can do the split. Well, maybe not all the way. His knees, again, can bend so much more than what's expected on the human. And ankle bend forward and back. Really super articulated, super creepy looking robot. That's one of the good guys. K2SO. I love watching him in the movie because in the movie he's this super smart, intelligent robot, and he's always calculating the odds of uh, their mission succeeding. And he's one of these really annoying voices that always say, "Yeah, I've calculated. We have no chance of succeeding. Let's just go home." Or sounds like he's always pouring cold water on their parade. It's just really, really funny. And yet, when you see him in combat, because he's a reprogrammed Imperial security droid, so he's super badass when he's in action. He has incredible marksmanship. He can shoot really well, and of course, because he's a robot, he's super strong, super fast, and he's basically able to overpower any human character you see in the movie. So that is our friend K2SO, evil-looking robot that is actually a good guy. Putting K2SO to one side, we're bringing our next representative of the metal faction. This time we have someone that is so far out there, so unconventional, that honestly I had no idea who this guy was when I bought him. I just bought him because he sounded kind of cool. It's one of those impulse buys that I do from time to time. If I hear about a character that I never heard of before, but if his story or his ability sounds really interesting or his design sounds really interesting, I'll just go ahead and buy him, hoping he'll blend in with my collection. And luckily for me, in the case of this guy, it blended in fine. This super heavily armed robot dude in a suit of gold armor is called, and I kid you not, his name is Blast Attack. Blast Attack. He came from uh, those of you who are a fan of Masters of the Universe, She-Ra or He-Man back in the 80s, you might remember this guy. Although probably not, because he actually never appeared in the cartoon. There was a action figure made of him back in the 80s, but because of the nature of this guy, they didn't see fit to put him in a cartoon. And I'll tell you why. Blast Attack has a very secretive origin. No one really knows who he really worked for. It, the only sure thing we know about him is he worked for was a bad guy, but we don't know if he's with Skeletor or if he's with Snake Man, or does he just randomly fall off the box on his own, like he just did now. Luckily, this guy is very durable, so I have no fear of him breaking. So like I said, Blast Attack is one of those wild cards just randomly appear on the battlefield and everyone scatters when they see him. Why? Because his superpower is he blows himself up and taking everyone with him. Yeah, that's him. This golden armored robot. His superpower is he will show up when the good guys and bad guys are fighting, and then he walks into the middle of the crowd, and he blows himself up. You can say that Blast Attack might have been, probably is, the first ever suicide bomber created as a toy or as a character in a children's cartoon. This is why they ended up not including him in the cartoon because they just couldn't find a way to make that look proper. I mean, what's next? Are we going to start including genocide in the cartoon? And now that we have a like suicide bomber in there? Now some people may say, well, okay, that doesn't sound like much of a superpower because once he blows himself up, and that's it. Well, that's what I thought. When I bought this action figure, I didn't know much about him. So I thought, well, that's kind of lame. He just walk in there and he blow himself up and it's all over. So he's like a one-off character. But no, apparently Blast Attack is such an incredible robot. Every time he blows himself up, taking everyone with him, killing everybody around him, he will reform. All the particles in his body will come back together, and he put himself back together, and he can do that all over again. So he's a suicide bomber that never actually dies. How cheap is that? Like that's one of the cheapest superpower I ever heard of. Imagine like if a guy like that technically can dominate the battlefield forever. So yeah, he's goofy. He's really goofy. He has a goofy name, Blast Attack. He's a goofy superpower. He blows himself up and then he put himself back together to do it again. But he's an interesting looking character too. He is a bulky looking robotic uh, figure wearing mostly gold armor with all kind of gauges and dials on the chest plate. Like this just look like a guy who a robot that is ready to blow up anytime with so much uh, uh, little buttons and dials all over him. You can see on the back of his helmet there's big screws. Like these are what's holding him together, and he's going to blow up anytime. He has big blocky football pad looking armor on his leg and chunky boots on his feet, and he comes with a very high-tech looking axe that kind of look a little bit like a cross between an axe and a toilet plunger, and he has a whip in his other hand that has a kind of a bladed or clawed end on the other end of the whip. So, no, he doesn't have to blow himself up all the time. He has enough weapons, so he can uh, do some physical battle as well. This big rifle on his back, he didn't actually come with it, but another character came with that. But it looked, actually, I decided it looked better with Blast Attack than with the original figure it came with. So I put it on him. So now he's a bulky robot dude who can blow himself up endlessly, wielding an axe, a whip, and got a giant rifle on his back. This upper torso, the outer part of the armor, this is rubber. There's a generic torso underneath. But since this rubber piece doesn't come off, we'll just count that as his actual body because that's what it's meant to be. Um, of course, it does limit his articulation slightly, but as far as this is an action figure made in I believe 2012, I think 2013 maybe. He is pretty well articulated too. The head turn, shoulder go in and out, forward and back, elbow bend, wrist turn, waist kind of yeah, waist turn, bend forward and back, leg kick forward and back to the side. Wow, he can actually do a split. Look at that. For a big bulky guy, that's cool. Knees bend, ankles, yeah, kind of move. Not much, but kind of move. He's not a very well-known character. He doesn't have a very cool name, and he has one of the most wacky superpowers I ever heard of. And he's kind of got a questionable background to him because, like I said, he's probably the first ever suicide bomber design was meant to go into a children's cartoon and it got canned because it's just too crazy. So he's just overall really wacky, really crazy robot that I really wanted to include in today's uh, Toy Thursday, representing the metal element. I mean, a metal dude who can endlessly blowing himself up. We can't skip that. I have one last metal character to show you guys, and this will require me to rearrange things slightly. So give me 1 second. Getting rid of the platform that other action figures stand on. You may be wondering, why did I just do that? Why did I get rid of the platform? Uh, because this next figure is super big. If I have him on the platform, I think you might not be able to see him or all of him on the camera. So I'm going to let him stand without the platform. Hopefully, you guys can see uh, the entire figure. Now, brace yourself. This is one of the biggest action figure in my collection. He is quite large. And what really amazing was, I got him for less than $50. He is huge, he is bulky, he is heavy, and he's quite a cool action figure. Those of you that follow your X-Men Marvel comics, uh, you probably know this guy on sight. He's not just one character, he actually represents a whole group of characters. This mostly silver, black, and purple robot is called a sentinel. Sentinels were created to hunt down mutants. When some of the people in the military and some of the scientists decide that the mutants like Wolverine and Magneto and Deadpool and those guys, some of these mutants were getting too powerful. They decided to fund a secret project to make giant mutant hunting robots. These robots will upgrade themselves and they have all the technologies in them to neutralize these mutants' mutant power. And they are very tough, very dangerous. Um, they have been a thorn in the side of the X-Men and many of the mutant superheroes for a long time. Uh, Not because they are particularly super powerful, but because they're cheap to make, and there's so many of them, and they're huge, and they have guns, and they have, like I said, powers that can neutralize some mutant ability. This particular specimen I'm showing you guys here in front of the camera was made about 7, 8 years ago, might be longer, might be 9 years ago. And I believe he was made by Hasbro, uh, and he is actually supposed to display with uh, action figures that are only 2 or 3 inches tall. Like he is huge. This guy is 18 inches tall, weighs like 5 pounds. He feels like he weighs like 5 pounds. Ooh, yeah, he's kind of heavy and super bulky. For the most part, a sentinel, especially at least this particular sentinel, look like a very muscular, very large muscular human or humanoid. You can see that there's kind of a back muscles there at his lower back, and there's definitely muscular suggestions on his leg and his arm, and he even sporting a six pack on his belly. He has some exposed wires on his wrist and on his ankle, and he has a lot of these big, bulky armor platings on him are add-on pieces. They are kind of a soft rubber shell slipped over the base torso. And of course, he has a kind of a bald, smooth-looking helmeted head. Like I said, his coloration is mostly black, silver, and purple. Um, I want to bring one of the guys back into the frame so you guys can see just how big this robot is. Let's bring um, let's bring K2SO back in because K2SO, like I mentioned earlier, is already kind of a large robot. He's 7.5 inches tall. So he's already kind of taller than most of the human-sized action figures, but when we stand him next to the Sentinel, he barely come up to the Sentinel's mid-thigh. Isn't that crazy? I mean, let me hold him up here so you guys get a proper scale. He's about as tall as the Sentinel's arm is long, and the Sentinel can actually grab him or hold him in the hand like this. I hope that gives you guys an idea of how big the Sentinel is. This is 18 inches of mutant hunting murderous robot. And like I said, this is not one robot. There was supposed to be a whole squad of these guys. So can you imagine something this size showing up? There might be 50, might be 100 of them, 200 of them. It doesn't matter what kind of mutant power you have. You're kind of uh, doomed in this case. And these Sentinel robots, they don't just stomp around either. They don't just stomp around and crush you under their feet. They have uh, energy weapons built into their hand, so they can fire laser. And I don't know if you guys can see. There's kind of a laser port on his wrist there. So when he points like this, he can actually fire laser from his arm. And I believe they can even fly, but I don't remember accurately if all of them can or not. Despite of being a big figure, he is quite articulated. His arms move forward and back. Do they open to the side? They might. Uh, yeah, they do. I'm kind of scared to force it because it's an old figure. It's almost 10 years old. Elbow move in and out, up and down. Wrist move and rotate. Legs kick forward, go out to the side. Really tight joint. I'm glad it's a tight joint because it's a heavy figure. If the joint's too loose, he wouldn't be able to stand. Knees bend. There we go. Yeah, wow. Really tight joint. and ankle move as well. So this is a giant, heavy robot, super articulated, super cool looking. I got him less than $50 back then. It's just one of the better deals I've ever gotten on something this big. And that's not all. This guy has a electronic feature built in. Some of you can see that he has a logo on his chest. There's a button in the middle of the logo. When I push the button, I hope you guys can see on the camera, his head should light up and he will say something like that. Yeah, pretty cool. He's huge, he's heavy, he's impressive looking, and he talks. Now, he is actually, even though he's super huge, he's already 18 inches tall, he's actually slightly too small. When you display him with your 6-inch action figures, the Sentinels are supposed to be as tall as buildings, a lot of them. So he's he's really supposed to only work with 3-inch, 2-inch action figures. However, I when it comes to this guy, when it comes to the Sentinel, I am willing to make an exception on the display because he's 18 inch, he already looms over most other action figures, so even though he is still too small, he doesn't look too wimpy. He looks just as threatening at this scale as if he was twice the size. So I'm really happy with this guy. Um, Let me give you another comparison with see how wide he is. Let me turn him around. And let's take K2 SO and put him across the back of the Sentinel. You can see that the Sentinel is wider. It's actually slightly wider than K2 SO is tall, which means this is a robot that is wider than 7.5 inches. If you enjoy these Toys Thursday or any of the daily videos, I would suggest for you to check out the Johnny Tiger Experience podcast, where we have action figure reviews, martial arts stuff, and all the things you enjoy on these videos in audio format and in much more details with professionally mixed sound effects and music. To find the Johnny Tiger Experience podcast, just go to any of your podcast apps. It doesn't matter if it's Spotify or Apple Podcast. Just type in Johnny Tiger Experience podcast and you will find it. I hope to see you guys there or on the next video. Thank you for checking out today's Toys Thursday. We'll be back again tomorrow for Fitness Friday. For now, have a good night.